Right. But I would like to talk to you about elves.
Yes, I'm teasing you. You know that.
Yes.
You clipped this off what I said about.
Yeah, I just started the recording right now, so we're safe. so, so Magnus, you run the elf school in
Yes,
Reykjavik,
I
and
do.
I was just so excited to find out about it. Um, how did you get started in that?
Well, do you want the long story or the brief story?
Whatever you want to give me. I want to talk to you for as long as you'll talk to me.
Well, we were a few teenagers, 43 and 4 years ago, and we founded the Paranormal Foundation of Iceland. We were in college and in high school. We wanted to know everything about paranormal things, and we wanted to know both about life after death and aliens and purpose of life and nature spirits and elves.
Yeah, so
And
all those essential questions that I'm really interested in as well. So we're kindred spirits in that way.
and we did some researches, and we also started collecting everybody's paranormal experiences, and that was interesting. And many of my friends in college and when we were in universities were tourist guides, and they were always bringing one or two persons that was very interested in elves, because elf is a very interesting thing in Iceland. This is one of the deepest core of the culture here. The heritage is believe in elves and hidden people.
Right, and I heard that a lot of people in Iceland are actually atheists, but they still believe in elves. And and could you explain your perspective on that? I mean, that's something I've heard and read, but you're somebody who actually lives there, so you probably know the real scoop.
Well, 54% of Icelanders believe that elves do exist. This is normally 2 or 3 or 4% in most other Western countries. There's a reason behind this. Everybody in Iceland knows some witnesses. Iceland is a small community, only 300,000 people. And the Enlightenment that started in Europe, this movement that started in Europe in 1600, never managed to come to Iceland until in the 19th and the 20th century. At that time, the Enlightenment had cleaned this out of all European countries. But Iceland is an island far out the Atlantic and was very isolated for a long time. And the Enlightenment never came here to clean this away until the last 50 or 100 years. That's why we still have it. Everybody knows, in Iceland, knows some witnesses. Everybody heard dozens and hundreds of stories of people meeting elves and hidden people. A politician in Iceland would stand up and say elves and hidden people is nonsense, bullshit. He would never be re-elected here. That's like standing up in the UK and say, I think we should get rid of the Queen.
Right.
He would not be re-elected. But people know witnesses that they trust. That is the reason why Icelanders believe so much in elves. And these stories are so close to everybody here in Iceland. I have collected paranormal experiences of Icelanders as well as others for more than 40 years. I met more than 900 Icelanders and 500 foreigners that have seen elves. It's only one thing these people have in common. They are psychic. They have the sixth sense, more or less.
I see. So
Those
they're
are,
able to see what maybe others aren't able to sense.
yes. It is estimated that 2 or 3% of mankind is psychic enough to see elves once in a while, to see dead people once in a while, to see ghosts once in a while, see events that back in time or in future once in a while. Psychic ability is a very strange phenomenon. But if you're not psychic, it's most likely that you will never see elves. You will never see that. If you are psychic, you would easily see them if you're on the right spot on the right time.
Now, I have
That,
sorry to interrupt, but I have a friend here in the States, John Tenney, who is a paranormal researcher of some decades. And he claims that he was able to see an elf, but the way that he was able to do it is he had some elaborate steps that he had to take to prepare himself for being able to see an elf. Now, in your estimation, can someone do that? Can someone get to a certain space in their mind where they're able to see elves by doing different steps?
According to our knowledge, no. Very few, if anybody then. Most likely you are born, people are either born, everybody's little psychic. Some people are much more psychic than the average. And other people are very psychic. And the most heavy psychic people, they even don't see any difference on dead people and living people and hidden people and elves. We live in such a crazy society today. Most heavy psychic people today are locked up in mental hospitals as schizophrenias. The official health care system doesn't have any proper understanding on this. Yes, I hope we will get out of this dark ages sometimes, and surely we will. But while we are, it's quite heavy to be psychic. Either you have to be heavy religious to get enough protection, God or whatever protection it is. You have to be quite religious to not get both possessed or some other diseases that easily might, schizophrenia disease or other diseases that might ruin your life. So it's a sacrifice to be psychic, but it's also an advantage too.
Right. Well, that's really a refreshing perspective. So back in college, you created this paranormal society, and then you also studied this, and have a background in anthropology, right?
Well, I'm an historian, but I learned partly anthropology and partly ethnology and partly folklorism.
Right.
But first, second, and third, I studied history the most. But this relates to history quite much, and yes, we were just teenagers, wanted to get some answers about life after death. And everybody my friends were always asking me, Michael, there's a few people that is with me here, foreign people, could you tell them something about elves? And I did that, and 2 days later came one lady, 2 ladies, and 3 ladies, and 2 men, etc., etc. So that's why we opened the Elf School. It's just opened 1988. It was open, and it's always open on Fridays at 3:00, and people also can reserve a special session some other times if Friday doesn't fit to them. And we are planning now to open an afterlife school within a few months.
Oh, wow.
And hopefully in a year or 2 or 3, we're going to open an alien school too.
Okay, wow. So a lot of different things that you're offering refreshing perspectives on. I wondered, let's just go back a little bit to talking about, you were saying people know that there's elves in Iceland because it's such a small country and everybody knows someone who's had an experience, and it's a trustworthy person that they believe. So, I mean, that was like, wow. I mean, that really makes sense. If you know someone like your mother or your father or your brother or your cousin,
grandpa,
right, that tells you, that you rely on for life itself, and then they tell you, look, I've had these experiences with these hidden people, with elves. You can't, how can you respect them and not believe what they say?
Of course.
Yeah.
Of
So
course.
I mean that's interesting, and I know that in other countries, like in Ireland, they have similar beliefs. They like because in Iceland, you want to make sure that construction projects and road building and those things are done in a way that respect these other beings, right? And they do that as well in Ireland, and to some extent also in Hawaii with the Menehune. And
Yes.
I just wondered what you thought about these other cultures. Do you think maybe elves are all over the world, or yeah, I guess we need to know a little bit more about elves and the hidden people. And, are they only in Iceland, or might they be in other areas like I just said, like in Hawaii, the Hawaiian Islands, and in Ireland?
Elves and hidden people and nature spirits are everywhere. No doubt at all about that. They're much more observed and accepted in Iceland than in other countries. And we've had this deep friendship that was between the elves and the hidden people and the humans for centuries. Elves have saved hundreds of lives here, thousands of lives here through centuries. And this mutual friendship that was between the elves and the hidden people and humans is so beautiful, so beneficial for both. And it's so good and gorgeous. This is nothing alike. And it's very stupid to shut this friendship down, which
Yeah.
we are about to do, unfortunately. But that's why we also hurried up to get all these witnesses that still did exist, and we audio taped all of them, 99.6 or 7%, and we videoed the far best witnesses, 6 and 7% of the witnesses, in a high quality video. We're going to make a documentary film about it, and these witnesses explain in details how the elves look like and where they live, what's their culture, what's their clothes, language, ideas about them and us and God and eternity and everything. Elves, we have 16 or 17 types of elves in Iceland. They are from 2 or 3 centimeters, the smallest ones, with wings, the flower elves,
Mm-hmm.
and we have up to house elves. They are about 80 or 100 centimeters, the biggest one of them. And then we have the hidden people. They are totally human-sized. Uh, Human body, human culture, human traditions, human everything. They are very interesting. They have been the closest friends with us for these centuries. And this friendship was and is so beautiful. This is so mutual. This is so unique. There's no doubt in my mind this was all over in the world 5 or 6 or 7 or 800 years ago. And
Right.
before that, this was everywhere. Psychic people saw these nature spirits and communicated with them, and the people believed them and benefited from this. Iceland is one of the very few, almost the only country in the world that still has this.
Right. And that's why I mentioned Ireland and the Menehune in Hawaii, because it seems very similar. A lot of the stories, and the native people of Hawaii, respect the Menehune, for example. So, what are these creatures? They're nature spirits, as you said. And so, what you said before about how they've saved lives, that really captivated me. Could you elaborate on that a little bit? Like, how throughout history they have been beneficial and enriched people's lives.
Well, elves and hidden people have found starving people, humans, back in time, Icelanders, giving them food. They have helped Icelanders that was lost in the wild and helped them to find their road back home. They hosted them quite often, gave them dry clothes and everything. They have given sometimes sick people medicine, something white liquid nobody knew what was, and the humans were drinking it and they got cured. Icelanders should have been 4 or 5 million, so things would have been okay, but we are only 300,000 because of winter, and especially the volcanoes have killed us regularly through centuries. And on this time of crisis, for example, in the 18th century, when more than half of the nation died in a year or two, elves helped a lot of these people and hosted them and gave them food. And this is so, we have benefited so much from this, so enormously much from this. It's unexplainable in a short interview.
Yeah, all the things, because it sounds like it's carried on throughout the centuries.
Yes.
This relationship.
I know I know quite a few present living Icelanders that elves saved their life when they lost in the wild before back in time.
So what you mentioned earlier that, and I just let it pass, and I can't let it pass. You said that this is ending now. What did you mean by that?
Well, as necessary as the Enlightenment was, this movement that started in 1600 in Europe, it was founded by humanists and free thinkers and very nice people. They wanted to get rid of the church and all the mean things church has done and religious has done for humans. They were right, totally right. But they not only killed faith in Europe, they also killed and cleaned all myth and mythology out of Europe. Among that was belief in elves and hidden were nature spirits and other beings, dwarves and gnomes and mermaids and just name it. And this is declining in Iceland. Iceland was totally isolated from 12th century until 19th century, more or less. We first got the Enlightenment on full steam when the British and American army invaded Iceland during the World War II, 1940-41. Since then, we have had the Enlightenment on full steam, and it is here now in Iceland. It is efficient. It is cleaning this away. The Elves and Hidden People study and friendship. You hear much fewer elf stories today than you heard before. If I should be frank, the Enlightenment, which is very necessary, is still the scientists and science and the public opinion in the country bullies those who dare to talk about elves and their friendship.
Yeah.
This is the problem we have. And when I meet normally witnesses today, they hardly dare to talk about elves anymore.
Because of the stigma now with science.
Yeah.
And
totally.
Yeah, let's address that because, as you say, science is valuable. It's one way to see the world. But there are other ways to see the world that are also beneficial. And so what I'm hearing you say then is that what you mean about this ending is because of the Enlightenment, is because people of their over-reliance on science, to the detriment of other ways of knowing. Is that what you mean about it ending, possibly?
Well, partly yes, but mainly I like the Enlightenment. I like science and scientific approach on things. But scientists have prejudice against a lot of things. Right. One of it is paranormal things, paranormal experiences. When I was small, 15 years old, started in college here in Reykjavik in Iceland. Then in most Western universities, they were opening parapsychological departments for researchers. And I was very glad, and I thought, okay, now the time has come. Life after death will be explored, and ghosts and out-of-body experiences and UFO and aliens and nature spirits and elves, and we will get some answers in some decades. But no, this is not what happened.
Right.
What happened now, 47 years later, is most of these parapsychological departments in the universities have been shut down, and those very few that still exists have hardly no money at all to do researches. Yeah. We are on that state today in mankind. There is hardly no researches at all in mankind field in this. This is a funny situation. We've never had more money and staff and scientists doing research, but never as little in this field. This is stupid, this is sad, and this is very expensive. We will lose a lot of abilities that we could have explored and benefited so much from. Uh, yes, I could tell you a lot about that.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like, I'm going to infer then the reason for the school is to keep that alive, right? To give people a forum for talking about these stories and teaching others about elves. Am I right in thinking that?
Yes, you are. What we did with Open the Elf School, and which is to give a normal tourist, as well as Icelanders, an opportunity to come in a school and hear stories and hear explanations about it, historical background. This is no academic teaching that is too boring, just a good overview with endless amount of stories of friendship between humans and elves and hidden people. That is interesting. The best thing to teach about these things is to tell stories, different types of stories. That explains much more than anything else. We could rubbish here back and forth for half an hour or more, and that's much less teaching than telling stories that happened.
So, what is your favorite story then? Your absolute favorite story about that relationship between humans and elves?
Oh, there are so many. There are so many. One of my favorite stories is, well, they're all too long, but one of my favorite stories is when an elf lady borrowed a cow from a human lady, and the cow vanished for 6 weeks. She came in a dream to lady in Snæfellsnes in West Iceland, in Melabúð. Jakobina was living there with her family, and she was quite psychic, and she knew the hidden people family just 100 or 200 meters away from her farmyard. And one night in the winter, this elf lady came to Jakobina and said, Jakobina, we are really in trouble. You know me. I'm your elf friend. Could we borrow your cow? Our daughter was just having a baby this morning. She doesn't have enough milk for the baby, and we have only one cow, and that cow isn't milking. I know you have 4 cows. It doesn't happen. We could borrow one of your cows. And that cow was borrowed for 6 weeks. It was away. It was not in this universe, wherever it was. It was crazy weather. It was not in a stable. It was not in a barn. It was not outside. It would have been frozen to death within 24 hours. If it would be in outside. And 6 weeks later, the cow was back. And the elf lady came in a dream just before that and told her that she had put the cow back in the barn. And the cow was in a very good mood, good shape, milking more than ever, much more creamy milk and everything. And there were 5 witnesses that witnessed that the cow was gone for 6 weeks. I could tell you so many stories. This is not part of this is less than 1/10 of the story, but this is just the outline of it.
Yeah. But the important thing is that real people in Iceland have been experiencing this relationship with the hidden people for many centuries and having stories like this that they keep alive through their families and now through you at the elf school.
Yes.
Yeah, and I shared my story with you, which I teach at a Native American school. Our First Nations people here, many of them, have little people stories. And I had my own experience with a puffball mushroom, right? Where I felt like something not normal was going on. I just wanted to measure the puffball mushroom for my students because I knew after the long weekend it would have grown. And I thought, well, we could do some subtraction to figure out how much it grew from Friday till Monday when I come back, right?
You should challenge all the Native Americans would tell and write stories about their friendship and when they have seen the little people and the friendship they have had with them and their ancestors.
I will do so, and I think that some of that is also already going on. But I mean, it would be great to, milk, to go back to the cow, milk those cultural connections there for what we can learn cross culturally about relationships with elves. But
We have done research on life after death through seances and other things quite
right,
much. You know what seance is?
yes,
And we have done a lot of researches through people that have met aliens. I'm also the leader of the UFO club in Iceland.
yeah. Well, before we depart, I want to get your read on some of the recent UFO news. But my story, right? I was clued in that something weird was happening because of the two chipmunks that kept scurrying out of the forest and running around my feet. I mean, that doesn't happen, right? And I felt there was a message there, although I know how that sounds. And I talked to my Oneida mentor at school, and that's how I was able to get a message from my interaction with the mushroom and with these chipmunks, right? And so I wondered what you thought about that. Now, I didn't see anything. I saw chipmunks. And I saw a mushroom. I didn't see elves. But I felt like there was a message. And
hear anything?
No, I didn't hear anything. It was more like something happened here. And then I related the story to my mentor. And I said, well, you have to understand this thing about mushrooms, how they're always there. You very seldom see them because the fruiting body just bursts out of nowhere and then just as quickly seems to be gone, right? But they're always underneath you. There's miles and miles of mushroom cells, mycelium, snaking through the soil and actually connecting the trees and providing nutrients to those trees. Providing messages actually between the trees and supporting life. And so when I said that, when I was explaining this to her, I understood the message because I'm a bit of a doubting Thomas. And this was my message that, these things are real. Spirit is like the mushroom. Spirit is always there and it's always supporting you, but you might not see it. You only see it in fleeting glances, just like the mushroom, and then it's gone. But it's always there underneath you, supporting you.
Did you get massage, you said?
What was that?
Was it message?
It was a message. That's right.
What sort of a message was it?
Well, as I said, it was like a metaphor. It was a metaphor that the mushroom is like spirit is. And so then I was able to actually, at school, we had a training for teachers, and I shared this story with a breakout group. And then they were like, you know what, you have to tell the whole staff this story. And people cried. People cried when I told the story about how the spirit is always there, connecting us to each other, delivering us nourishment and messages, just like the mushroom. And I felt that was a gift from, maybe it's not I don't know what it is the point. I didn't see anybody with little pointed shoes and a little hat or anything like that. And I know that's the stereotype. I'm not saying that's how they really present themselves. But
you asked me the opinion on this.
Yes.
This is a story. This is an experience. It's just a tiny experience, but
yeah.
It is a really contact with some nature spirit. I got some intuition or message or whatever it was. We have a lot of these stories on file here.
Right. So it seems like there was an interaction, but it's interesting how it doesn't come to you like through the usual senses. You experience it in a different way. I feel like in my brain something weird happened here. What is it? And then I was able to bring it out through discussing it. Right? So
if you would go to mental doctors, you would get a receipt. it hereby confirm that this lady, Alison Jolene, is insane.
Well, a lot of people would probably back that up. But, you know, that's the problem. As you say, you know, we've got to be allowed to have the variety of human experience, not to be shoved into this little, like, materialist box.
Challenge you to come to Iceland and come to the Elf School and hear the stories.
Oh, I want to.
4 or 5 hours.
I really want to.
You will be paralyzed.
So what would you suggest for people that, you know, besides coming to the Elf School, because, you know, I know they're going to want to come to the Elf School after they see this, and I'll link to it from YouTube so they can get more information. But what would you suggest to people right now if they want to just go outside today and start communing with a nature spirit? You know, what would be a good first step?
You don't get so much connected to these beings unless you're psychic.
But, I mean, they notice you, though, whether you notice them at, right? I mean, they're still out there. They could notice you.
I've never seen elves.
Right. You have never seen elves.
No.
But do you have a relationship with an elf?
No.
No.
I would love to.
You would love to.
Yes, but I'm not psychic and I don't have any relationship with them, unfortunately not.
Okay.
Here you can see my husband, my humble, moderate husband.
Hello, nice to meet you. I'm Allison.
My daughter. We are gays living here together for 29 years. We have twins from Africa.
Oh wow, you guys are awesome. And I'll let you go in just a moment, but you know, when you live your life knowing that there's elves, you know, how do you approach it differently? You know, maybe you can't have an interaction with an elf, but, you know, how do you live your life differently with that knowledge?
I would just simply say hello to them. How are you? Nice to see you. Nice to be in presence of you. You're welcome here. I would love to be your friend.
So started a friendly dialogue with them.
Yeah.
And you could do that verbally or...
Not like the typical American approach is to shoot and then ask.
Oh, yeah. Well, not so much me, but, you know, it seems like that's a more likely attitude these days, right?
I'm teasing you, you know that.
No, but I know how you get that idea. And with the current administration... For sure, right? Not me though. But you know, we'll have to turn this country around somehow, and maybe nature spirits could help us do this. You know, they're
nature spirits are so precious and valuable in this culture, and they could help humans so much more than anybody could expect. You know, this is so stupid. This is so non-thinking action to shut down this friendship.
Right. So just be open to the friendship. And do you have to give your greetings to the elves verbally, or can you do it telepathically as well?
Both. Just do it both.
Just do it both ways. And could you leave them gifts? Like if you have something that is precious to you, you know, something that you like a certain stone, could you leave that for them? I mean, would that...
A gift or a leaf of a beautiful flower or picture, whatever, it doesn't matter.
Right. And that they will see that. And maybe reach out to you in some way, even if you don't see them. I mean, because in my experience, I didn't see them, but I still thought about it, and I got a message.
I'll tell you later on a good elf story. But I hope somebody is still watching us after all these 40 minutes of interview.
Sorry.
This should have been much shorter. Here in Scandinavia and Europe, interviews are much, much shorter.
Well, you're talking to me. So before I let you go, are you aware of the recent New York Times story about the UFOs that were being studied here by the Pentagon? And, you know, that made big waves that, you know, that people in the government are coming out and admitting to some of this. What was your reaction when you saw that?
I just thought and said, at last they admit something of this.
Right, because, what is your take on what is going on with unexplained aerial phenomena and UFOs?
Well, there's no doubt in my mind the extraterrestrials come regularly to Earth, a lot of them. Most of them don't come to Earth. The universe is full of life on all levels. And of course, we should try to communicate with them and ask them for help. We humans are really in troubles. And these extraterrestrials could give us a lot of advice. We have been working on that here in the Paranormal Foundation.
Wow. Well, next time we'll have to talk some more about that. But thank you so much. I know you're having your dinner, and I have talked to you for a really long time. But it's just because I love talking to you.
I'm starving to death here after these 2 days of interviews with Alison John Lee.
Well, thank you so much for your time, and maybe we'll get to talk again sometime. And thank your family for me as well.
Yes.
Have a great night.
Thank you.
Bye-bye now.
Bye.